love the imagination, I guess. So I want you to imagine your mission trip host. What is their name? Where do they live? And what do you think they're doing right now? Maybe they're in this room. Probably not. What do you think our host does when we don't have a mission group with them? And what do you think their daily life looks like? Are they a parent? Do they have kids? Do they have a job? Do they full-time in religious life? What does it look like when they don't have a group? Now, what do you think it looks like when they do have a mission group? This might have made you realize that, you can open your eyes if you're really close, but this might have made you realize that maybe you don't know anything about your host. Maybe you're not actually sure of their name. So ask your coach about that. But also, I hope it made you realize that they have lives outside of hosting a group. So I want to just highlight some of them. So right here in the middle is Carol. I've already read to her a couple of times because she's awesome. She's a single consecrated woman who has given her life to mission in Honduras for the missionaries of Christ. She traveled often. She does fundraising. She leads retreats for missionaries of charity. She does a lot of great things. Missionaries of charity, you guys know how busy they are. Well, maybe you don't, but if you go on mission event with them, you will be put to work. But yeah, they're busy ladies. Amazing. Like Craig Jory, right? He's great when he's not with our groups, and even when he is with our groups, he's on the streets of Mexico City, bringing people to Jesus, helping people out of poverty, getting them off the streets. You guys recognize these people? They're busy ladies, especially the middle one. Sister Marcella is a beast, but they're doing amazing things with pregnant women, with college students. Oh, it's Cheeky. Cheeky, I don't know if you know this, is the CEO of the mission, so he has other things to do. He's also a father. We have Alejo here, who is always in Pamplona. This is Father Shane Sullivan. I've never actually met him, but I did Google him. And he's our host in Ireland. He's actually a missionary in Greece, and he's from Minnesota, and he's given his whole life to rebuilding the church in Ireland, which is really cool. Also, side note, we don't have a team right now that we're able to send him in the summer because we're low on staff, so if you want to go serve with him. LMK. Oh, they should told me to use kids. And this is Matush. He is in Slovenia. He is a full-time engineering student, also a volunteer firefighter. But all of these people, besides what they do in their normal day-to-day life, set up a mission trip for 20 of us to come. They help find us housing and food and transportation, and then they give us stuff to do for an entire week, even though they have really busy lives already on their own. And so all this to say, your host has a life. And so, but when we come and serve, obviously they also love having us. I hope they love having us, but they wouldn't be working with us if they didn't. You should just ask them. But they do have to adjust their lives when they come, when we come, right? So just remember that when we're dealing with our hosts, we want to make sure that we embrace humility and we embrace gratitude, because I don't think you understand. Well, I don't know. I'm sure I don't understand what it takes to host 20 people coming from a different country. That's a lot of work. And we're so grateful. And we want to recognize, too, that they're doing great work the whole time that we're not there. All year long, they're doing great work. And a lot of them have given their lives to the work that we're doing. So we want to make sure that when we're going, we're just remembering that we're there to serve them and their communities. We don't want them to feel like they have to serve us at every need. Okay. So each trip looks a little bit different because of each host. The work that we do might be different. Some trips are going to be really evangelization. Like in Europe, you're not going to be working with the physically poor quite as much, although you may work with some a little bit. Some trips are doing a lot of manual labor. Every trip is going to be different. But for every trip, we do have the same two goals. One, obviously, evangelizing our university students. The mission and focus is to make disciples of all nations by going to the university campus, because we feel like that's where we'll have the biggest impact on the world. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is to serve, like we talked about, the physically and spiritually poor through existing apostolates. So while every trip is different, we want to still maintain the identity and focus, and Lizzie talked a little bit of how to do that, but that might come up in situations like with Christ in the City in Denver, or with Missionaries of Christ in Honduras. They have they receive other trips too, so they actually have their own kind of formation and their own things they want to make sure are communicated to our students when they come. And so we want to just work with them to make sure that, like, yeah, we're not just saying, no, you can't tell our students anything, like, we're the only ones that can inform them. Like, that's not it, right? We want to work with them together to see, great, are you actually covering things in your talks that maybe I don't need to talk about now in one of my curriculum talks? Or something like that. We just want to make sure that we have a balance between, like, making sure that we're still getting we're actually, like, getting the flavor and identity of the apostles that we're working with while maintaining our own identity as a focus mission trip. Great. Okay, so what do you guys think are some potential issues that could come up with working with our hosts? Just yell out. Communication. Maybe a food schedule. Sure, travel. Expectations. That is a good word. Yeah, so there's plenty of things that could come up. Maybe the host maybe doesn't really understand fully, like, what we're hoping to do on a focus mission trip, or maybe this happens more kind of like in Asia, or maybe they think we want to do more tourism than we actually do, or maybe they think we need more rest than we actually do, or vice versa. Maybe they're working us too hard and everyone's getting sick. Expectations could be off. Or maybe the host thinks our group is lazy. So it could be things like that. And a lot of these issues, we try to work out those kinks before you guys go, but especially with newer hosts, it can just take a couple of years before we fully understand what they want from us, and then we're hoping more from them. This could also happen. Sometimes we'll have a host that we'll have a really good communication with, but then for some reason they either aren't actually there with our group or on mission, and they have a representative there, and sometimes we'll just have to re-communicate just kind of what focus missions is to that person and maybe work out a couple things there. So as a director, this is going to be your job on the ground. It's your job. You're the one being trained. You're the leader. We trust you to be able to make sure that things go smoothly, and if a conversation needs to be had, that you're the one to have it. So just some practicals. A good thing to do. Somebody said communication. Communication is just so important. I mean, same with our chaplains on campus. Like, it's just good to be proactively communicating and be like, hey, Father, how do you think it's going? So same with on mission. Like, hey, host, like, how do you think it's going? Are there any issues that you see? And that way you can just meet one-on-one with them, make sure that, like, we're doing what they're hoping, and so just do that. That will prevent a lot of issues. We want to do that individually so the host can be candid with us. Make sure that when you're going, you understand the host's charism and apostolate. You understand, like, what they're trying to do through the work and why. Because it's good stuff, and that's how we can best serve them. We have to know what their hope is. Just ask, get to know your host. Like, ask them to share, like, your group gets to know your host. I know, like, Alejo, like, loves just getting to know everybody, right? So, like, invite them into, like, your mission group and, like, share your testimony and share about, CLM and the work that you're doing, all that. Like, invite them into your group. They're a vital part of the mission. If you make sure that the non-negotiables are communicated, the coach should be doing this beforehand, but just in case something's missed, you guys can do that, and then reiterate vision as necessary on arrival. Okay, so now we're just going to do a quick activity. So I'm going to put 4 things up here, one at a time, but I want you to get a partner. And you're going to turn to your partner, and you'll each have 30 seconds. So I'm going to put a situation up there. Like, what would you do if this happened? And I just want you to explain to your partner what you do. And then 30 seconds later, we'll switch. So choose who's going first. All right. Here comes the first one. Ready, set. Your host gives you a schedule and there's no time for holy hour. What would you do? Go. Working hard enough. Harder to deal with than the others. Number 3, taking me out to dinner. What would you guys do? Yeah.
I said, ask if we could just cook together instead, like go to the market.
Oh yeah, ask if we cook together instead. Okay.
I mean, I also assume that our host has some understanding of like why you get in a month, because we know it's these ranks. Like,
Yeah.
Rate this much is what we have to spend.
Yeah.
We can't really go together.
Yeah, just talk to him about getting budget for this. Yeah.
I'll try asking questions. I'll try to figure out what he thinks is supposed to be happening.
Yep. And you ask him why he keeps bringing this up.
Figure out this
Mhm. Good.
From my understanding, we send money ahead of time for our groceries.
Sometimes.
Ahead of time. So I've asked if we did that, where that money's going from,
Yeah, sure.
where the
Yep. I think so much of it is, obviously there's what you say, but there's also how you say it. So, yeah, just have like a conversation with the host and maybe ask like, yeah, is there like what, I actually didn't think about this answer beforehand. But, yeah, can we talk about dinner? Like, it's been so difficult at all these places. Thank you so much for bringing us around and thinking of us. I don't think we actually budgeted for this. I think we're going a little bit over budget. Do you think like would it be possible for us to just stay near the retreat center, or yeah, could we maybe, or could we, it depends on the host, what your solutions might be, but so much of it is just how are you communicating. And so the gratefulness is very important, but then still trying to sell the product. We don't have enough money for it, we don't have enough money for it, so, okay. Last thing I will mention just on the topic of food, in general, we want to see what we're given. If you want some great stories about eating what you were given, talk to Rachel from Benedictine, because she has some good parts from her time for real next time. Yeah, like I said, it can be really offensive some places to not eat what's set before you. It's often a way for people to be hospitable. They're offering us maybe the only food that they have, or yeah, they can't really afford much, but they still want to eat. So we want to accept that and receive that, unless you have a severe allergy or something. Great. We would hope to prevent any of these sorts of things from happening by talking to our host beforehand, communicating any allergies. We try to communicate, like we kind of have sensitive stomach, so please watch that for us. But yeah, in general, we want to eat what the local people eat. We don't want to be maybe eating fancier foods out for dinner or whatever every night. We want to engage in the local culture and eat what the locals are eating. But I would prepare your team at orientation, like, hey, if you're offered food. Like I remember one time I was with my caught on the university, and we went on a trip to Honduras, and they gave us chicken on Friday in Lent. And I guess because maybe they don't see chicken as meat, or I'm not quite sure, but I think they eat chicken on Friday. I don't know. Anyway, our chaplain was just like, just eat it. Like they served it to us, and that's what we're going to eat. Even though it's a Friday in Lent. It was helpful that we had a chaplain there to approve it for us. But yeah, so prepare your team at orientation even earlier to do that. So this is durian. It smells so gross, they don't even allow it on the metro in Singapore. But I ate it. I ate it because the people in Malaysia really wanted us to try it. And so we did it, and look, I'm still here. So. All right, I'm gonna pass it on now to Amy. She's gonna talk about working with our chaplains, and she'll get a proper introduction later. So everyone, Amy.
Great, thanks, Laura. This is going to be pretty short and basic, but I think it's really important because chaplains are our lifeline on mission. And so I want you guys to think back to the end of 2020, right? December 2020, we're wrapping up on campus. We're going home, seat is in January, and everybody starts getting sick. Come to MBLS, everything's great, people are like really sick, and then we soon find out that there's a pandemic, right? And maybe for some of you during the 2021 year, have been able to go to Mass on a weekly basis. Maybe some of your chaplains have said, you know what, even in spite of this pandemic, we're still gonna have Mass every single day. And maybe some of you haven't had access to the sacrament because of the pandemic. But I think what I want you guys to realize is that for some of the hosts that we work with, for some of the villages that we go and serve, they haven't had access to the sacraments in weeks and months. And so when we bring a chaplain on these trips with us, they are a huge saving grace, not only for us and for our students, but also for the communities that we go and serve. So what I want to do right now is just go over kind of the before, during, and after of chaplain care, essentially, and what it looks like to care for your chaplain on mission. To not only put yourself in a good position to be a director, but also to care for our chaplains, right? To remember that they are human. Because I think oftentimes we forget that and we ask them to run themselves to the ground, but to realize that they are human and they have human needs, like they need rest and they need a break. So we're going to talk about before, during, and after. Okay, so before mission, ideally what should happen? Anyone?
Talk to your chaplain.
Yes, you talk to your chaplain. What do you talk to him about? Expectations.
His role.
His role. Decisions. Yes, great. So all these, again, should be pretty basic, should be pretty simple. And you guys all know this, right? So it's just a reminder to you of what should happen before. So include him in leader meetings, right? This is a really good opportunity for him to actually meet your team, especially if he's not a chaplain going on an all-campus trip, or if he just doesn't know your other leaders. Keep him up to date throughout the trip, right? So how does he like to be communicated? Does he want to come to every leader meeting, or would he rather prefer a monthly email of what's happening and any updates on the trip? So ask him that. Are there talks that you would actually have Father give? So a good talk that I always recommend my chaplain to give is the Why Missions talk. And right, this depends on your chaplain that you bring. So if he knows focus really well, if he's a national chaplain, this would be a great talk. If he doesn't really know focus well, does it make sense for your chaplain to give this talk? Understanding what Lizzie had talked about the non-negotiables of a focus mission trip and what separates it from just any other service trip. And then the second thing is, right, have a conversation with your priest. Share the vision of what it means to serve as a chaplain on the trip. Remind him that he is a spiritual father to your students, to you guys as missionaries, and to the communities that you serve. And I think one thing that I want to stress here is that maybe some of the students that are going on a trip, this is the first time that they have gone to Mass in a really long time. Maybe this is the first time they've gone to confession in a really long time. And how important the priest's role in this is. So just to stress that. The second thing is all decisions must go through the church director. You guys are here for a reason, and that's to be trained as an equipped mission director. And one thing I want to say as a caveat is your chaplain has universal authority, right? He is the priest of the church, and we should ask for his advice. We should ask for his knowledge on certain situations. But ultimately, you guys have been trained and will be trained throughout all this week to make the final decision. So please ask your chaplain if there's something in your schedule about putting Mass first or Holy Hour first or whatever it is, and you want some feedback, please ask your chaplain. And then as a director, make a decision, right? So, okay, before mission, do those things. What about during mission? What should happen on mission? Anyone? Yes. Nice. Check in with Father and see how he's doing. This is a big point. And again, back to what I said at the beginning, I think sometimes we forget that priests are human. And I think students sometimes forget that priests are human. And so this point is just to see, like, is Father okay? And I think sometimes we experience this too, like where we're in uncomfortable situations, when we've experienced foods that we're not used to. Priests are not immune to that. And so to just check in with Father and say, yeah, how are you actually doing on a physical level? How are you doing mentally? How are you doing emotionally? Do you need time for rest? And allow and offer opportunities for your priest to get some rest if that is what he needs. The second point is to take into consideration any needs he may have. So one big thing that we ask all of our mission directors, all of you guys, is to accommodate for your chaplains as much as possible. So like, is he able to have his own room on mission? Is he able to sleep in his own hotel room for orientation and debriefing? Obviously, if it's not possible, it's not possible, but to try to accommodate as much as possible. The second thing with this is to ask him to cooperate with the schedule as much as allowed. But to note that if he's been hearing confessions all day and he just needs to take a break, again, to go over expectations of, okay, this is our schedule for the rest of the day. These are when we are doing formation talks. This would be a really good opportunity for you to find some rest here so that you can actually engage in mission during these set times. And then the third thing is, if your chaplain needs to be on his phone, ask him to do it privately. So sometimes our chaplains have an emergency email that they have to respond to or have an emergency phone call. And that's fine, right? It's fine that if he needs to step away, but we ask our chaplains to do that privately because we want them to actually engage in mission and show our students what it looks like to live out these fasts that we're asking all of us to engage in. Okay, the last thing I want to point out with this is just be a missionary, right? Use your emotional intelligence to navigate these conversations. I think sometimes conversations with chaplains can be scary, but it doesn't have to be, right? It can be a simple conversation of, hey, I noticed X, Y, Z. Can we just talk about it really quick? It doesn't have to be this like build up and then have a really heightened conversation, really tense conversation. So with that, after mission, what are some things that should happen after mission? Thank you. Yeah, that's a huge one. Reflect. Yeah, great. Yeah, you guys know it. Thank your chaplain, right? He sacrificed his week. Sometimes on summer mission, they go up to 4 weeks on mission with you guys. So that is a huge chunk out of their schedule that they are serving on mission with you. So just thank them for being there. Ask your chaplain what the mission trip was like for him and his priesthood. Again, just a time for reflection for them. right? We have heard countless chaplains and priests say, this has actually changed my priesthood. This is how it has changed how I live out fatherhood. And it's been incredible to hear the stories of changed lives from priests. So ask them how it was. Ask them, are there any things that you wish had gone differently? Or what were some of the highlights of this trip for you? And the last thing is just to take some notes for future reference, right? So one caveat I want to make here is sometimes not all priests are fit for mission, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that they're a bad priest. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with them. It just means that they're not a good fit for mission. And so if that is the case, just take some notes. What we do after trip, it's called a post-trip interview, and we just ask, how's the chaplain on your trip? How are your leaders on the trip? And just take some notes if there was anything unusual or anything, that was maybe out of the ordinary, just to jot those down and to tell your coach what happened. Okay, so with all good talks, we're going to do an activity. And I'm going to actually invite all of the priests that we have here to help with this activity. And I'm also going to invite one of our very vet directors, Steph Shipley. So what's going to happen is I'm going to set the scene a little bit. Steph is our director, and then every chaplain will play a different role as a chaplain. So what I want you guys to do is help Steph navigate how to have a conversation with X, Y, or Z chaplain. Sorry, Father Gabriel, we're going to have Father John go first. Okay, Father John. Father John Ignatius, yes. Okay, Father John has been given no expectations of the trip and his role as a chaplain. He doesn't really understand focus missions and is a little on the bougie side. He loves history and only wants to see Catholic sites all week. So this set the scene. We are in a leader meeting. Staff has invited Father to one of the leader meetings, and they're having a conversation. They're going over the schedule.
So yeah, Father, I just really would love to go over the schedule with you and just with the team, and just get your kind of thoughts on it. Is that okay?
Just one thing I want to say first. We just got here in Rome, and you put me in coach in the back of the plane. I was hoping for first class, so I want you to know because I'm very tired.
Okay. Let's see what. How would you help Steph navigate through this conversation? Thank you for coming.
He acknowledged that he's stressed and overwhelmed.
Yes.
And just hear where he is in the conversation.
Hear about, acknowledge where he's at. Steph, how would you react to this?
Yeah, I'm so sorry, Father. I did not ask you beforehand just like what your needs might be for the flight. And maybe we can schedule in some time for you to get a rest this afternoon since you might need that, especially considering we have massive adoration this evening, and we would love for you to hear confessions, but again, if you're not able to do that, we can figure that out. So I apologize.
Wait. Mass and adoration in the evening? Stephanie. We are in Rome. I want to go have these awesome Chiantis in the restaurant that I saw close to the Pantheon and have that pasta tartufo. I was hoping for that, and you want to have mass and adoration?
And confession? Yes, I do agree that it did look like a really great restaurant, so I would love to talk to you about maybe fitting that in later. And yeah, clearly, maybe we should reevaluate and have a conversation later just about, again, the schedule and what our priorities are on this trip and how we can work together and meet both of our priorities.
Great, thank you so much. But just keep in mind, we are wrong. So don't forget, when we finish our mission, to go to all these churches. I want to go to that church with Caravaggio paintings. I mean, that is so good for the students and for me. So, but just, I'm with you guys. I'm on mission. I'm a missionary priest. But keep those things in mind.
You got it.
Wonderful. Okay, some things. What are some things that staff did well? Redirect. Yep. What else?
She tried to find common ground.
Common ground. That's great. Yep. What else?
Apologetic when necessary.
Apologetic when necessary. Yeah.
She didn't give up on holy arm mass.
She what?
Just throw up holy arm mass.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, she stuck with the non-negotiables.
She validated his feelings.
Validated his feelings. That's a great one. Yeah. And also thanked him for coming. Right. Thank him as a chaplain. That was awesome stuff. I'm gonna have her stay on stage just for the sake of time. But okay. Second, we're gonna have Father Doug come up. Father Doug is our salary. He has been hearing confessions for 3 straight hours. And no time for rest.
Yeah, when I came on this mission, I had no idea that your missionaries were like so spiritual. You needed to make a confession like every 36 hours. I'm kind of worn out. I just went the second day.
Very understandable.
How would you help Steph navigate this situation? Yep. What else?
Offer rest.
Offer rest. Yep.
From the good that he did.
From the good that he did. Yeah.
He's asking like how often like he would want to hear confessions.
Yeah.
What his expectations were going into it.
Yeah. Ask him his expectations. That's great. Steph, how would you respond?
Wow, Father, I did not realize that our group was so spiritual also. What a true
Ridiculous.
I was just about to say, you'd love to talk on scrupulosity later.
I'm tired.
You had a last day and you can just sleep the rest. But no, I do. To hear confessions for 3 hours, one, is just an amazing feat. I mean, I feel like Padre Pio did that, but not many priests do that. And so just thank you for being here. I know that literally brought healing to those students and those people that you heard those confessions. So thank you so much for doing that. And we can definitely talk about just the schedule and different ways that maybe we can find you at rest and limit that confession time in the future. So yeah, we'll definitely sit down and look at that.
Okay, last but not least, Father Gabriel. Now, Father Gabriel is a social media influencer. He loves to go on Insta Live. He's making phone calls constantly and leisurely pulls out his computer in front of the group multiple times.
Stephanie. I've been living in the shadow of the Poco Poco podcast. I live in Baltimore, Mary Valley Angeles. Being with focus has prepared me. We have this wind built in. We're going to partner together. And we have this Masi Masa Oh, my Yes, we are in. fists like I've already seen a shade. We are going to take over with Bossy Boss.
That's awesome. And a great idea, especially for when you're back in the States. I'd love to talk to you about just how to realize your dream, really. I apologize. I probably did not go through just like the expectations that we give to the students of just the facts that we go on. And we just really want them to engage in the country that we're in here and to try to leave behind the U.S. in a certain sense. And they struggle a lot with social media, whereas I know that you have a really great integration of how whereas just the average college student really tends to take these things. And so, I'd like to just talk to you more about kind of how we can integrate that, but also how we can help the students have the best trip that they could have.
And I think the reality is that it can be as lighthearted as that conversation or those role plays were. And sometimes you'll engage in conversations that are a little bit heavier. But to engage as a missionary, to acknowledge the priests that are coming on our trips and thank them for their sacrifice on coming on mission, and to use emotional intelligence and how to navigate a conversation. And if you're like, I don't know how to respond to this priest, ask your team. Be like, okay, I'm noticing these things. Are you also noticing these things? And if they are, have a conversation about like, what should we do? What are some talking points that I can have with Father? Bring your team into that conversation so you don't feel isolated and alone in having these conversations. So those are just some key points with working with our chaplains.